Welcome back to the Weekly Education Pulse. I'm Sammy.
I'm Tony. Each week we bring to you a global snapshot of the most important developments shaping the international schools sector.
This week we're covering 5 stories that highlight how international education continues to expand, diversify, and restructure across different markets.
We look at regional expansion by a major international education group in Southeast Asia, a new British primary school opening in Dubai, a historic UK school becoming fully co-educational, and a merger between 2 established independent schools.
Together these stories reflect how schools are responding to changing demographics, parental expectations, and long-term sustainability pressures. So let's dive into the first story, where we're going to Thailand, where EtonHouse International Education Group has officially expanded its Southeast Asia footprint with the launch of Middleton International School, Bangkok.
New school introduces a future-ready trilingual education model to the Thai market, reflecting EtonHouse's broader approach to combining academic rigour with language development and global competencies.
What's notable here is the positioning. Rather than simply exporting a single language international curriculum, Middleton is designed to integrate multiple languages and cultural contexts, aligning with Thailand's increasingly multilingual family base.
For EtonHouse, this marks a strategic move into Thailand's competitive international school landscape, building on its experience across early years, K-12 provision, and bilingual education models existing elsewhere in Asia.
And Bangkok just continues to attract new entrants, not just because of scale, but because of demand diversification. Families are looking for models that balance international pathways with language fluency and also regional relevance.
More broadly, this expansion reflects a wider trend we're tracking across Southeast Asia. Established education groups are leading growth, bringing differentiated models rather than generic offerings into mature international school markets. And now on to our second story, which comes from Dubai, where a new British school is set to open in August 2026, offering provision from foundation stage through to year 6.
The announcement adds to Dubai's already crowded British schools landscape, but it also reflects the continued strength of demand for British primary education in the Emirate, particularly among younger families entering the system.
What's notable is the age range. New schools opening at primary level often respond to demographic pressure at the early years and lower school stages, where demand is typically strongest and most stable.
For families, especially those relocating to Dubai or entering international education for the first time, British primary schools remain an attractive option due to curriculum familiarity, structure, and clear progression routes.
From a market perspective, this also highlights how confidence in Dubai remains high despite fee sensitivity and increasing competition. Operators continue to see space for well-positioned primary schools that can scale over time.
And more broadly, it reinforces Dubai's role as one of the world's most active international school markets, where growth is increasingly driven by long-term resident and regional families, not just short-term expatriates. And now we're going to move to our third story this week, where we're going to the United Kingdom, where Magdalen College School, one of the country's most prestigious independent schools, has announced that it will begin accepting girls into its main student body for the first time in its 500-year history.
Founded in 1480, the Oxford-based school confirmed it will welcome girls into years 3 and 4 from 2027, with girls joining year 7 from 2030. The move follows the school's decision to open its sixth form to girls 15 years ago.
What's significant here is not just the symbolism, but the timing. Long-established single-sex schools are increasingly reassessing their structure in response to demographic shifts, parental expectations, and long-term sustainability.
For many families, coeducational is now seen as the default rather than the exception, particularly at the younger age groups. Schools that remain single-sex at scale are increasingly in the minority.
And this is reflecting a broader recalibration within the independent and also international school sector. Schools with deep heritage are balancing tradition with the need to remain relevant and accessible to a changing pool of families.
While this is a UK-based development, the implications extend globally. British independent schools continue to shape perceptions and expectations across international markets, particularly where British curriculum schools mirror governance and structural models from the UK.
So as more historic schools move towards co-education, it reinforces a wider shift in how excellence, inclusion, and long-term viability are being defined in premium education.
Fourth story this week, again, stays in the UK, where St Dunstan's Education Group and West Lodge School have announced a merger, bringing the two institutions together under a shared group structure.
The West Lodge School is a well-established independent preparatory school, while St Dunstan's Education Group already operates a broader education offer. So the merger is positioned as a way to strengthen long-term sustainability while preserving each school's identity and educational ethos.
What's notable here is how familiar this pattern has become. Rather than closing or radically restructuring, independent schools are increasingly turning to mergers and group models to share resources, governance expertise, and operational resilience.
From a leadership perspective, this allows schools to focus more sharply on educational quality, pastoral care, and strategic development, while benefiting from scale in areas like finance, compliance, estates, and also staffing.
These moves are often framed around continuity and stability. Schools emphasise that teaching, culture, and community remain intact, even as ownership or governance structures evolve behind the scenes.
More broadly, this reflects a wider trend we're seeing across both independent and international schools. Group consolidation is becoming a key mechanism for navigating rising costs, regulatory complexity, and also competitive pressures.
And of course, this is a UK-based merger. The model increasingly mirrors what we see globally, where school groups play a growing role in shaping the future structure of international schools market.
And our final story this week comes from Europe, where Forfar Education has announced its strategic entry into the Greek education market.
The move marks Forfar Education's first step into Greece and reflects growing interest from international education groups in Southern Europe as a destination for long-term values-led expansion.
What's notable here is the framing. This isn't presented as rapid rollout or speculative growth, but as a strategic entry, suggesting a measured approach focused on market understanding, local partnerships, and long-term positioning.
Greece has historically had a more limited international school market compared to some of its neighbouring countries. However, rising international mobility, returning diaspora families, and demand for international qualifications are changing that landscape.
For education groups, Greece increasingly sits within a wider southern European corridor that includes Portugal, Spain, Italy, markets that combine lifestyle appeal with growing appetite for international education pathways.
From a sector perspective, this reinforces that broader trend we've been seeing, where established operators are looking beyond traditional hubs and targeting markets where demand is emerging. Regulation is negligible and competition is still relatively contained.
And for families on the ground, the entry of experienced groups can help raise standards, broaden choice, and accelerate the development of international education ecosystems.
And that brings us to the end of this week's Weekly Education Pulse.
From expansion and new openings to structural change and consolidation, these stories show a sector that continues to adapt in response to shifting demand and market realities.
As always, thank you for listening and for engaging with the Weekly Education Pulse. If there's a development in your area that you think we should be following, please do let us know.
And we'll be back next week with more updates from the sector. Until then, we'll see you next time.